Good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first of two public hearings which are being held in advance of our regular council meeting. So I am calling the public hearings to order by stating that they are being held pursuant to Section 465 of the Local Government Act. During these public hearings, anyone who believes that his or her interest is affected by the proposed application will be given a reasonable time to be heard or to present written submissions respecting matters contained in the bylaws that are the subject of these hearings. All information, correspondence, petitions, or reports that have been received concerning the subject bylaws have been made available to the public. Council may ask questions of staff and public, but once the public hearing is over, no new information can be received. Council debate on the bylaws will take place when the bylaws are considered after the conclusion of the public hearings. At that time, any questions of staff will be for clarification purposes only. The public will be invited to come forward to present their comments. Speakers are asked to state their name and civic address with all representations, whether written, in person, or electronic, available to the public for viewing or in writing as part of the public record. Remarks will be limited to 5 minutes per speaker and should include all of the relevant information in their presentation. Further opportunity will be afforded all members of the public to speak a second or third time with new information, only once all persons have had an opportunity to speak. I will now ask the corporate officer to provide information on the notice of these public hearings.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Notice of the public hearing was provided by advertising in the Summerland Review issues of July 2nd and July 9th, 2020, and by mailing 20 notices to property owners and occupiers in the surrounding areas.
Thank you. So on to public hearing number 1, 3.1 in the agenda, 12819 McClarty, Official Community Plan Bylaw number 2019-044 and Zoning Bylaw number 2019-043.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
In 1994, the subject property was transferred from a developer to the District of Summerland on the condition that the land would be used as a park. Although the property has been used as a park since then, the OCP future land use designation and zoning were never revised to reflect the new use. Can you put it up onto the screen? Or? Okay, thank you. So the intent of this application is to legitimize the land use by amending the OCP and future land use designation from low density residential to park, and to rezone from residential estate lot zone to the Parks and Recreation zone to fulfill the condition of the 1994 transfer. This application received first and second reading on February 10th, and due to COVID-19, the public hearing has been delayed until now. Thank you.
Thank you. I see that no correspondence was received as the publication date of this agenda on July the 8th, and nothing since then. Correct. Okay, thank you. Is there anybody in the gallery that would like to speak on public hearing number 1? I will ask a second time. And a third time. Would anybody like to speak on 12819 McClarty? All right, so I'll declare that one closed then. Actually, could I have somebody bring forward the recommendation to close that first public hearing? Councillor Patton, Councillor Van Elfen, all in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. And then on to public hearing number 2, 10309 Prairie Valley Road, Official Community Plan Bylaw number 2020-009 and Zoning Bylaw number 2020-011.
Thank you. So the subject property and its neighbor, 10317 Prairie Valley Road, share a common owner who plans to consolidate the properties into one parcel by removing the interior lot line to expand their existing Montessori school and childcare facilities. However, the land use designation at the subject property is incompatible with the proposed use and development. In order to build the infant and toddler center and the center for children between the ages of 3 to 5, the applicant is requesting that 10309 Prairie Valley Road be designated as administrative under the official community plan and rezoned from the residential medium lot zone to the institutional zone, which will permit these uses. Here you can see the location of the proposed child care center, as well as the development concept for the new building and the addition to the existing Montessori school. The proposed OCP and zoning bylaw amendments received first and second reading on June 8th. At this meeting, Council also passed a resolution requesting that a restrictive covenant be registered on title to limit the maximum height of principal and accessory uses to the lesser of 9.5 meters or 2 stories to reflect the height of adjacent RSD1 zone properties. Overall, staff consider the proposed concept to be consistent and compatible with district policies as well as adjacent land uses. Thanks.
Okay, again, is there anyone in the gallery that would like to speak to this zoning and OCP amendment? Please come forward to the podium and begin by stating your name and your street address, please, your civic address.
My name is Regine Park, and my address is 10515 Prairie Valley Road.
Could you pull the mic down just a wee bit? Then you won't have to stretch. Thank you. It's okay.
My question is, we didn't receive a letter. None of us, only one person on the street on Prairie Valley Road received a letter.
Okay, we've written that down, and we'll have that discussion when we talk about the bylaws. As they come forward to us, we can ask that question of staff.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is that all that you care to comment on?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
Is there anybody else in the gallery that would like to speak to this? Third and final time. Anybody that would like to speak to 10309 Prairie Valley Road amendments? Okay, council? Could someone bring? Sorry?
May I just ask a question? So if the neighborhood hasn't got the information, we can't close a public hearing, or I just want to make sure we don't close out this public hearing before we might want to put it aside.
Madam Mayor, I can ask the planner if she can provide information on the notification area.
Okay, through the chair, Madam Mayor, and I'll maybe zoom in on this air photograph just to show the neighbouring properties. So the subject properties are located at 10317 and 10309 Prairie Valley Road. The notification requirements under our procedure bylaw require a 30-metre notification distance for neighbouring properties as part of rezoning application process. So this property is the adjacent property that was spoken to at the public hearing is located greater than 30 metres from the property line. You're approximately 38 metres from the property line, so they would not have received a letter in the mail based on our current public notification process. But the site has a sign out the front notifying more people about the proposed project.
And that would be the only, sorry, that would be the only property that was required to get, or they were not required, but is that the only property that would be included in that 30-metre?
No, so all properties within 30 metres of the subject parcel would have received notification. Properties directly to the north, east, south and west of the property would have received notification. Unfortunately, the property at 10 515 Prairie Valley Road was not within the 30-metre notification requirement.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Barkle?
Are these notifications delivered by mail or by hand?
They're delivered by mail.
Because that's not so good these days.
Okay. Okay, Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Is it okay to ask, do we have any correspondence on this one?
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Madam Mayor. So we did receive a letter from Eric and Kathy Jansen of Beavis Place, and a second letter that came in after the publication date from Natalie and Thomas Fisher of Beavis Place.
Thank you.
Councillor Traynor.
I just have a question related to notification. On the property, was there one of the district signs put up that that tells people when the public hearing is going to be?
Yes.
Okay, so that's visible from the road.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Could I have someone bring forward the motion to close this public hearing then, please? Councillor Van Elfen, Councillor Holmes, all in favor? And again, this will come forward for further discussion at the beginning of the regular council meeting. Okay. And so now on to the regular council evening meeting of July the 13th. I will call this meeting to order by stating that it is being recorded live and is streaming on the District of Summerland YouTube channel at youtube.com, District of Summerland. All representations to council, written or verbal, will form part of the public record and be available to the public for viewing electronically or as a written record. Members of the public are encouraged to register their name and civic address in advance of the meeting by email at corporateofficer@summerland.ca if they wish to speak to the following items. The public comment opportunity item 10, development variance items 11.1, 2, and 3, and a second public or media comment period, which is item 17 on tonight's agenda. Those who are listening to the live recording and have not registered in advance may call 250-404-4052 during the live meeting to be added to the speakers list. Introduction of late items. I believe there is something to add.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There will be a late item added to 13. It'll be 13.3, and that's the release of a closed resolution that was approved by Council on July the 10th.
Thank you. With that one amendment or one addition, could I have someone bring forward the amended agenda? Councillor Holmes, seconded by Councillor Traynor. All in favor? Great, thank you. Looks like I did this backwards. Do we have, yes, we have a few minutes to adopt. Regular council minutes for June the 22nd, afternoon and evening. Are there any revisions or deletions or additions to those minutes? Councillor Barkle, will you bring that forward?
So I'll bring it forward as presented in the agenda for
Thank you.
adoption of the minutes.
And seconded, Councillor Holmes. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, thank you. And now on to the bylaws that we just heard in the public hearing. And we're going to consider third reading and adoption of OCP Bylaw 2019-044 and Zoning Bylaw 2019-043. These are both to do with 12819 McClarty Place. Council, do you have any questions on the presentation or any information that we received tonight? All right, so then if I could have someone bring forward the motions there, please. Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That official community plan bylaw amendment 12819 McClarty Place bylaw number 2019-044 be read a third time, and that the official community plan bylaw amendment 12819 McClarty Place bylaw number 2019-044 be adopted. And that zoning bylaw amendment 12819 McClarty Place bylaw number 2019-043 be read a third time, and that zoning bylaw amendment 12819 McClarty Place bylaw number 2019-043 be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Van Alphen. Seconder, Councillor Traynor. Any further discussion on this? Councillor Holmes.
I just want to say that I've had a few people approach me telling me that they're glad we're doing this, that trail is very well used to access the trails up behind, and so people have just told me they're happy that we're doing this. Thanks.
Nice to have some positive feedback. Anyone else? I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. And then on to 7.2, 10309 Prairie Valley Road. Again, to consider third reading and adoption of the two bylaws that we heard about a minute ago. Any questions from what we've heard tonight on this?
Madam Mayor, just to interject, these particular two bylaws are only being read a third time at the request of the applicant.
Thank you. My apologies. This is just for a third time.
My question is with regards to the two letters that have been received, questioning whether there's some improvements that could be done on the property line. And I wonder if that's something that council can put forward, or if it's simply a neighbor-to-neighbor conversation.
Through the chair, Madam Mayor. So maybe up on the screen we can show the site plan that shows the future conditions of the site. So through the OCP and zoning amendment, council have got have applied or proposed to apply a condition that would limit the height of the building. There's no other conditions that would require the landscaping to be provided in accordance with the plans that have been submitted. The site's not located within a development permit area, so there's no additional approval that would require that. Should council wish to require that the applicant require a landscape buffer, for example, as a condition of this approval, that's something that council would need to provide direction on, and we could add that to a recommendation. So the site plan, for example, showing the landscaping along there, that would consolidate if that was the wish of council.
Would, given that it's a school and childcare facility, would that be a common thing that one might want regardless of if it was permitted or not? Or told they had to do or not, I guess? Yeah,
the mechanism we have to require landscaping is through development permit tools. Our zoning bylaw doesn't require that buffer. There are a landscape buffer to be in place between this property, should it be zoned, and the adjacent residential area. So the ability for council to require such a condition is now through the rezoning, if that's something that council feel is appropriate to deal with the land use change.
Thank you. Is that something that you would like to see, Councillor Carlson?
I'm just asking the question to see if there's what would be required or put in place. So I don't know. I haven't really given it too much further thought than to ask whether it's something that must happen or not. So perhaps someone else has an opinion.
Well, it seems to me like a reasonable thing. Oh, sorry, Councillor Holmes.
I was just wondering, does the creek run behind the back of the property, or is it, no? It's all dry. It goes alongside, right? Okay. then I'd be fine with a buffer as well.
So through the chair, Madam Mayor, the graphic on the screen shows the blue area is the riparian or watercourse development permit area, so the creek running along that. And that's a 30-metre buffer each side of the creek that runs through there.
Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No, I don't have a problem with, some type of, a barrier. I don't know what the correct wording is, so maybe somebody can help me out. One of those fences that you don't necessarily see through, and, some type of landscape buffer along there that may help diffuse, noise in the future. I mean, it's a child care area, so it could get a little loud at times, but, just to be cognizant of the neighbors, that might help alleviate some of their stress, and worries.
Thank you, Councillor Van Elfen. Anthony, could I have you put the subject property on the calendar again? So we're talking about along here, correct?
Yes, so through the chair, Madam Mayor, this is the proposed site conditions. You'll notice, if I just zoom back to the air photo showing the existing conditions, there we go. There are a number of trees, again, located on this air photograph that exist along that back property line, but based on the proposal that's been submitted, it certainly looks like the intention is to plant some vegetation along that southern property line and along the east property line as well.
That they show there as existing trees. I'm wondering if there is an existing fence there or not. Thank you, whoever said that.
Thanks. There is a fence. Parts of it seem to be failing, at least along 10309 Prairie Valley. But do you want to bring that up? I think I might have photos in the PowerPoint itself too. Yeah. Not of the fence though, unfortunately, but in the bottom left one, you can see the existing trees that are there that provide a nice buffer, at least for some, with a bit of height. But lower down, you can still see through to the back of the property. Yeah, and then in the bottom right photo, you can see some of the fruit trees that are already there as well, and the owner plans to keep those.
Well, again, I think it's within reason to make sure that they take care of. I mean, that's part of the thing, to take care of the mature growth trees. I don't see why they wouldn't do that. It adds value to their property. And then to install proper fencing so that that lowest portion is a visible barrier too. Might help with balls and things like that too, as they're kicked around. Councillor Holmes.
Yeah, thank you. Wouldn't, as a school, they be required to have the place fenced anyway?
Yeah, through the chair, Madam Mayor. I'm not 100% sure on what provincial requirements may be in place for the fencing, but if that's a concern of council based on the impact that this zoning change may have on the adjacent property, then a 6-foot fence, for example, is permitted in our zoning bylaw, requiring that as a condition, for example, in addition to the trees that, from the suggestion made on the plan, are intended to remain, could provide that buffer that neighbours are concerned about.
Councillor Traynor.
I'm just going to add that I think given that they've asked for rezoning and that this is a new business, particularly a childcare business, I do think that it's reasonable that we ask them to put in either a 6-foot fence or a hedge. I noticed in one of the correspondence notes that the homeowner had been getting items tossed over the fence from the school, which kids sometimes do. So I think, you know, just out of respect for the neighbors, that it would be reasonable for us to ask them to, like I said, either do a 6-foot fence or some kind of vegetative border. Plus, that also protects the children because it's an infant daycare, and I think the more screening you can have around, the better for their safety.
So could we have some guidance on how to do that?
Yeah, through the chair, Madam Mayor. So if council support placing a condition requiring fencing, the condition could read that a 6-foot high fence be placed along the southern property line. That could be one component of a condition that council may wish, and then the other component would be to retain the existing vegetation or require a landscape strip to be completed along that fence line as well. So there's two different components. Council could require the fence and then enhancements to the existing landscaping that does exist along there.
And that would be included in the zoning bylaw?
So there'd be a condition of approval of the zoning that would speak to that should council support that.
Okay. I'm looking at you. So Karen, the first one remains as it is, correct? With the OCP amendment?
That's correct.
And could you read the revised second one, please?
Of course, Madam Mayor. So the first one will be that official community plan amendment bylaw number 2020-009 be read a third time. That zoning bylaw amendment bylaw number 2020-011 be read a third time. And that a condition of adoption be that the applicant install a 6-foot high fence along the southern property line and enhance the existing vegetation.
Okay. And so when this comes back to us for adoption, both of these, that will be the up-to-date thing that we're adopting.
Correct.
Okay, great. Is that
Just
good?
no, just before that, I was just wondering if, since this will go back to be a conversation with the applicant, I just wonder if we might set the intention of a fence, and maybe it won't just be the south line, maybe it won't be, I just wonder if maybe there should be some conversation with the applicant. So they understand what we are asking of them, and then making sure that it, we ask the right thing. Do you know what I mean? Instead of telling them they must do this just by assuming that this is going to work, tell them what it is that we need them to do, and then make sure that it's the right. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? It's been a long day.
Yes, Madam Mayor. I forgot this one was, the intention is to have it sitting at third reading. So council could support this to third reading and direct staff to work with the applicant to bring back a plan that shows the appropriate landscaping and fencing along that property line. And then council will see that information before you adopt the bylaw, and then you'll be in a position to decide if that's appropriate or not.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a staff.
That's what I'm trying
it's a staff
to say.
thing. Yes. Good point, Councillor Carlson. Councillor Barkle.
I'm just wondering about the, I don't know what the word is, legality of changing a bylaw at third reading, because then that portion of, you know, that direction in the bylaw hasn't been given first and second reading.
Through Madam Mayor, there actually, you can make changes to a bylaw at third reading. It's not very often that happens, but there is the opportunity. However, as we've just mentioned, I think as staff will go back and speak with the applicants, and should there be an issue with the request, that could be something that could come back to council prior to adoption.
Okay, just wondering, it seems like a different bylaw when you make a change.
Process question, yeah. Okay. Any other discussion on this or question, Councillor Holmes?
Just in respect to the notification area that was raised during the public hearing, I'm just wondering, I don't think it's unreasonable for somebody who lives across a parking lot from a property to expect to be notified when there's a change. So I'm just wondering if our notification area is something that the Building Process Improvement Committee will be looking at or is looking at. It's something that we've had issues with on numerous occasions in the past, and I know other communities have much larger notification areas. Oliver, I found out last week, it's 100 meters. So I don't know what it is in Penticton, but 30 just doesn't really seem to be enough.
Certainly, through the Chair, Madam Mayor. So the Development Services Process Improvement Committee are in the process of reviewing the Land Use Procedure Bylaw. So within that proposed draft bylaw that the committee reviewed a couple of weeks back was an extension from 30 metres to 60 metres for the public notification. So we'll certainly be bringing that back through the committee, back to council in the next couple of months.
Thank you.
Okay. So we have this on the floor then, and the direction is for staff to go back and talk to the other folks. Is there any further discussion on this?
Madam Mayor, I'm sorry, did we put that on the floor already? No. Move or second?
I thought so.
I didn't second it, but I mean, I could, or we could put the whole thing, leave the whole thing at second, and if it's preference.
Thank you, Councillor Traynor.
Karen read back suggested modification with adding in the 6-foot fence, but we didn't.
Are you bringing it forward then?
I am, as written, and then I guess we'll wait for staff to have a conversation with the owners. Is that correct, regarding the buffer? Okay. And then if we're satisfied with that, then we would vote to adopt it?
Correct.
Okay. And if we're not, then what do we do? Then we don't adopt it?
Yes, so
Okay.
should council give third reading to the bylaw, as a condition of adoption of the bylaw, staff would come back with that landscape plan once we have that discussion. Typically at third reading, a lot of bylaws sit there subject to Ministry Transportation approval and a variety of other conditions that could be applied. So it'll be very similar to those type of approaches that we deal with.
Okay. Seconder? Councillor Van Elfen? Okay, further discussion. All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. On. I'm sorry, but there's no more opportunity for public comment because we're past the public hearing. We are not legislated to be able to take any more information in once the public hearing is closed. Sorry. 7.3-11507 Blair Street. This is adoption.
Just before you go through that motion, I'll just recuse myself for a few seconds.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can we put it up onto the screen? Thanks. So the applicant is requesting a site-specific text amendment to the zoning bylaw to allow 11 modular units for temporary farm worker accommodation for their silviculture operations. This application received first reading on April 14th. At this meeting, council chose to waive the public hearing in accordance with the Local Government Act and to hold second and third reading on May 11th. Staff thought that the application had to go to the ALC for a non-adhering residential use application prior to adoption of the site-specific provisions, and as such, staff forwarded the application to the ALC on May 12th for consideration. During their review, ALC staff found that the property is actually exempt from restrictions on the use of ALR lands because the property was the only property identified on the certificate of title issued before December 21st, 1972, and was less than 2 acres in size. As such, ALC consideration is not required, and as a result, ALC staff canceled the application. at this time. It's within council's authority to consider adoption at this time. Thanks.
Councillor Van Elfen, you're bringing that forward?
Yes, Madam Mayor, that zoning bylaw amendment 11507 Blair Street, farm worker accommodations, site-specific bylaw number 2020-007 be adopted.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Holmes. Any further discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? And I don't see any hands raised for opposing, so that's carried unanimously. Thank you. There we go. On to item 8, my mayor's report. It's been 3 weeks since our last council meeting, and I've had a relatively slow schedule. I guess it's because we're in the long, hot dog days of summer. Are we? I don't think we are. On June 25th, I had the pleasure of attending online the Aqua Hacking Challenge, sponsored in part by the Okanagan Basin Water Board. There were 5 teams in the finals, and each presented a very innovative idea related to addressing a particular challenging water issue. The winning team from Sherbrooke University in Quebec was awarded $20,000 for further development and marketing of their product, and this award can be leveraged to $45,000 by other supporters. O0 is the name of the product and the name of the team, and O0 puts 40-degree water through the ballasts of boats to ensure that any invasive species, particularly zebra and quagga mussels, are killed. The process from start to finish takes about 10 minutes, and only 2 minutes of that time is used to kill the invasive species. The O0 team also spoke to a 60-degree water spray over the boat hull and trailer will kill the invasive mussels in a 10-second contact. So that was pretty interesting to listen to these young university students. On June the 30th, Council attended a 6-hour session to review our strategic priorities, have a COVID-19 update from staff, and do a regular check-in. Last Friday, July the 10th, Council had a quick closed session to confirm release of the redacted fractal financial analysis report to the public, and we'll be hearing more about that later in this session. And that is the conclusion of my mayor's report. Off to the CAO.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So just a couple of brief updates on some items we've been working on over the last couple of weeks. So great news today that the arena was back open. So today was the first day. The guys have been working hard over the last couple of weeks putting the ice back in. So we've got a number of bookings on the ice over the next couple of months coming up, which as we outlined, we presented to Council a little while back. The business case to open the building made sense. So great to see everyone back in action under strict COVID protocols, which is good to see. The Bathville Road construction, just chatting with our Public Works Director, that project is due to commence this week for the reconstruction of that road, which will move ahead with another component of our capital works plan for the year. The Peach Orchard Campground, we've had a positive start to the short-term farm camp at Peach Orchard Campground. The first night we saw three campers attend the campsite, and then that increased to approximately 11, 15 over the last couple of days. So that's where we're sitting at right now with the campground, and getting constant updates from the camp operator that was hired by the Ministry of Agriculture, and look forward to keeping the community updated on that facility over the next little while. But that facility is in place, as we've mentioned, from July 8th until the July 31st. So another couple of weeks there to accommodate the workers for our agricultural community. Had a number of interesting discussions with some of the existing businesses over the last few weeks, trying to support them as they look at reinvesting in their properties. A couple of buildings downtown, the Breakaway Brewing is close to completing their warehouse or manufacturing component out the back of their project. So had really good discussions, and our staff are assisting them through their process, getting that to completion over the next couple of days. And interesting to see, we've obviously had some vacancies in the downtown, but a couple of new tenants turn up into the downtown community, which is certainly a positive sign. A few larger additions to some of our industrial properties as well, which are currently in the permit process. So some interesting, optimistic things are happening in the community right now, which is a good positive sign to see, given the pandemic that everyone's dealing with. So that provides a brief update on everything that's going on right now. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Anthony. Okay. This is the first of two opportunities for the public to comment. We set aside 15 minutes maximum, and you're invited to come to the podium and speak for 2 minutes. Please begin by stating your name and your address. Is there anyone that would care to comment, or do we have anyone that wants to speak to us outside of in person?
There's no one online, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone? Please come forward.
My name is Jeremy. I guess 10401 South Victoria is my mom's house. I grew up here in Summerland, so I'm here to speak about the Summerland Slopage League. I know that council has been struggling to find the funds and stuff to open the Dale Meadows complex back up again.
Could I just interrupt you just for a second, Jeremy? My apologies. Can Mr. Davey continue to speak now, or does he have to wait until the end of the meeting? Because it's not an agenda item.
I think it's the financial report that's coming up to council with regards to the reopening.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. Okay, good. Thank you. My apologies, Jeremy. Carry on.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I actually just came up to have a voice more than anything. I know that some of you have played ball or have family members or friends that play ball. I have been playing in town here for 17 years, and I've been the president of the league for approximately 10. I've been working very hard with Mr. Haddad and Lori Mullins at the city to find a reasonable approach to getting the fields open. I realize that there isn't a huge amount of income that comes from this, but it is very deeply rooted in the community as far as sport and getting out there and allowing people to get back into somewhat of a normal lifestyle. We have submitted all of the start to sport, is that what it is? The back to sport requirements for distancing, the rules. The National Slopage Association has given us waivers and adopted rules to help us with getting back to play. I know that we're hoping to bring staff members back on come, I think, September, beginning of September. We would like to try to push for it to happen sooner. We have offered to volunteer, and I understand that with the city's labor force, or the district's labor force, that there's a union that has to be followed, and there are rules. But it breaks my heart for the amount of work, the amount of money that we've put into helping the city to develop the Dale Meadows field over the last 17 years that I've been involved in, and more since before. It's become a dog park, and it's become a place. I have dogs, so I have no opposition to dog parks, but it's kind of become a place that should be used by sports, should be used to get some kids out on the soccer field, let the adults and their families come back out and enjoy the facilities the way that they were built. It was 3 diamonds when I started, it's 5 now, and we are constantly developing and throwing things at it. So I'm really just here as a plea to council to try to find a little bit in the coffers to open the gate and allow us to start a league. I'm hoping in August, so that we can actually maybe get 3 months worth of play in, get a little bit of income into the coffers, as opposed to the unsanctioned and unscheduled practices and games that are going to happen without this. You know, let's make it sort of official. Let's make it city supported, and let's put a little bit back into the community. That's all I really have. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess I'll save my question until later. I'm hoping that somebody can answer it at that time. I have no idea. Okay. Thank you, Jeremy. Is there anybody else that would like to comment on something that's on the agenda tonight? Okay. So on to item 11, development items, beginning with 11.1. Development Variance Permit 20-001 for number 176709 Victoria Road.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The subject property is located within the Sedona Heights neighborhood. The applicant proposes to legitimize the height of 2 existing retaining walls that support their driveway. The maximum height of a retaining wall prescribed in the zoning bylaw is 1.2 meters. Retaining wall A, as I noted here, is 1.7 meters high, representing a variance of 0.5 meters, and retaining wall B is 2.4 meters at its highest point, representing a variance of 1.2 meters. The intent of height restrictions for retaining walls is to prevent the construction of monolithic walls that disrupt the form and character of a neighborhood. Other design considerations that minimize the imposing nature of retaining walls, including their location, material, color, and landscaping, could also be considered equally as important, particularly in situations where retaining walls are necessary. This application was originally presented to Council on April 27th. However, due to the lack of interventions to soften the appearance of the retaining walls, Council directed staff to work with the applicant and the owner to develop a plan and to bring the revised design back to Council for consideration. The owner has consulted with several local nurseries to seek professional advice on suitable drought-tolerant species that would help to minimize the adverse impacts of the retaining walls and corner escarpment. During this time, the owner was notified that several nurseries have a limited supply or are sold out of the recommended species. With this in mind, it's reasonable to expect any landscaping to occur in the spring of 2021. So we'll now take a look at the proposed interventions for each wall. So the discrete siting of retaining wall A does not visually disrupt the form and character of Sedona Heights. However, the owner is proposing to paint the wall the same color of their house, and the owner provided their neighbor who faces the wall the opportunity to select a color, but they indicated that they were okay with anything besides pink and orange. Staff consider this choice to be appropriate and in keeping with the color palette of the neighborhood. So the primary concern from the original application was the lack of proposed design interventions along retaining wall B. To lessen this impact, the owner is proposing to plant trailing lantana at the top of the wall, which will cascade down and make it more visually appealing. And in the bottom right photo, you can see where there's space to be able to plant these different plants. So although this plant that they're proposing will presumably help conceal the retaining wall in the warmer months, it's likely that it will be fully visible in the winter. And it should also be noted too that there is limited space for any landscaping at the bottom of the retaining wall for more robust landscaping like trees, bushes, and shrubs that could otherwise be used to help minimize its imposing nature. Now moving on to the corner escarpment. So although this area between the retaining walls A and B is not directly related to the development variance permit, as a link between the two walls, any proposed interventions should also incorporate this area to ensure consistency in design. The owner is proposing to place large rocks in this corner that reflect the colors and overall aesthetic of Sedona Heights. And then in between the rocks, they're planning to plant native grasses and hardy flowering plants that are conducive to this climate. So overall, staff consider the proposed landscaping plan to be reasonable, and particularly when the height of the retaining walls and limited planting species are a challenge for more thorough interventions. and staff recommend that this application be approved on the condition that the property is landscaped in accordance with the landscape plan provided by the owner. Thank you.
This is the opportunity for the proponent, if he or she is in the audience. And we'll see he's now. Is there someone in the gallery that would like to speak to this development variance permit?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Todd Gillard. I'm the developer of Sedona Heights. I understand this wall is larger than the variance. I was unaware, as you've received my letter, to the fact that I was unaware of the 1.2 meter requirement. So I understand your position on this, but in due respect, we're building on the side of the mountain, which is very difficult, and we have to put retaining walls of some sort in. And as I mentioned in my letter, I am the approving officer for Sedona Heights. We've put various different walls, and we have tried to make that subdivision probably one of the nicest subdivisions in Summerland. And the owner, Vic, unfortunately couldn't make it tonight. He had family emergencies in Vancouver and couldn't make it. I told him it was no problem, I would attend. And in any event, I was at the coast a couple of weeks ago. We have been looking at a year-round vine that grows, because I don't like the when you just see the roots and stuff over the winter months. So we were looking at an evergreen possibility that we're hoping will take in our climate. I have done everything in that subdivision to try to make it beautiful. I don't care what people do inside their house, but I do care about the curb appeal. And I'm sorry that council maybe didn't like the block wall that we put in, but we put other block walls in the subdivision and they've been passed. And as the approving officer, I have to make decisions that are sometimes hard to try to keep everyone happy, which is a very, very difficult choice, as you know, dealing with people every day. So we're trying to do our best, and Vic and Susan, the owners of Lot 17, will do a beautiful job landscaping their yard. They have a beautiful home there. Each neighbor tries to complement the other house next to them. That's kind of our goal. We will continue to do that. Now that I am aware of this variance, I will make sure any application going forward will be adhered to, and an application will probably be made at the same time the permit is. We are asking that we get a little more assistance from our building inspectors, which we all know we've had a really roller coaster with over the last couple of years in turnover of building inspectors. Vern has been great to work with, but he can only do so much, and he only has so many eyes. So thank you for hearing me. We will do whatever we can to keep all the neighbors as happy as can be, and Vic will get planting on that as soon as the vegetation is available, and he will be glad to hear your results of this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Would anyone else like to speak from the gallery? Okay. Council, questions of our planner? Councillor Van Alphen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just believe that this is a good solution, to a block wall, to try to cover it with some vegetative growth, and sounds like the owners are more than willing to do whatever it takes to, aesthetically please the walls and keep all the neighbors happy and try to keep the city happy at the same time. So I would put this recommendation on the table, Madam Mayor, if no one else opposes.
I just have a couple of questions.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
It wasn't clear to me that whether or not there would be shrubs put in place at the base of that wall. There will be? I remember you saying that there's room for it, but is that part of the landscape plan?
Sorry. Yeah, there isn't much room for it. If we can go, yeah, further up. Yeah, so as you can see, where the tree is on the left, that's the full width of one of the retaining block walls, and then it tapers off quite a bit. So and if you think of snow removal or anything like that, like it's unlikely, I think, that things would really survive there.
Okay,
so
thank you. I'm pleased to hear that the proponent is looking with Mr. Gillard is looking at something other than the trailing lantana, because that only has appeal really in a short period during the year, and I totally agree with something that is an evergreen that can trail down over there. I had one other question. It's regarding the other wall and the painting of that wall. Doesn't putting paint on there require a higher level of maintenance? Like, wouldn't it be better just to leave it the concrete color?
Yeah, there's no requirement for us to do it. This was the choice of the owner.
Okay.
Just something that they care to do.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. I can see how it might be a bit of a pain, but if that's what they would like to do, I mean, I'm not going to stop them. Okay, so thanks for answering those questions. Any other questions? Okay, Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That development variance permit application for strata lot 17 DL 440 and 2196 ODYD strata plan KAS 3196 to vary the maximum height of a retaining wall as prescribed in 5.5.2 of the zoning bylaw 2000-450 from 1.2 meters to 1.7 meters for retaining wall A, and from 1.2 meters to 2.4 meters for retaining wall B be approved on the condition that the property be landscaped in accordance with Schedule C of the Development Variance Permit number DVP 20-001.
Thank you. Seconder? Councillor Patton? Any further discussion? I will call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? That carries unanimously. On to the second development variance permit, 20-011 at 5277 Solly Road.
All right. Good evening, Council. So, this is DVP 20-013. So the district has received an application for variance in order to facilitate. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. In order to facilitate a proposed subdivision of the 0.28 hectare property at 5277 Solly Road into 2 single-family lots. The applicant is requesting 2 variances. Number 1, to vary the minimum width requirement for driveway access roads greater than 45 meters, as prescribed in Section 2B of the Driveway Access Bylaw, from a width of 5 meters to 4 meters. And second, to vary the maximum height of retaining walls, as prescribed in Section 5.5.2 of the Zoning Bylaw, from 1.2 meters to 4.6. So in the OCP, the future land use designation of the subject property is low density residential, and it is zoned RSD1 residential medium lot zone. To the north, these land uses are consistent with neighboring properties. To the south, the property borders on an area dominated by mixed use zones along the Lakeshore Drive Resort area. So the subject lot has an area of 2,786.5 square meters and is located approximately 2.1 kilometers east of downtown. The subject property currently has a single-family dwelling sited on it, with another, of course, to be constructed subject to the proposed subdivision, as seen there. So the requirement for the variance here was identified during the driveway design stage. So it was determined that the driveway would not meet bylaw requirements and variances were required. 2 bylaw compliance items were flagged, of course, the retaining wall height and the minimum driveway width. The proposal did meet all other requirements. So the applicant explored multiple options for layout and design of the proposed driveway. As a result of topographical, physical, and legal property line constraints on, on the site, there was no configuration possible that would conform to the bylaw. In order to achieve a 5-meter width, the driveway would need to be widened into the property at 13811 Phillips Avenue, requiring an agreement with the owners of that property as well as an access easement placed on the property. Further to this, the widened driveway would require a taller retaining wall than what is currently being proposed, and aspects of that retaining wall would be located within 13811 Phillips Avenue, requiring agreements with the owner of that property for ongoing, including an ongoing maintenance agreement. So the applicant has proposed a combined driveway that serves Lot A and Lot B. The proposed driveway would roughly align with the existing driveway access off Solly Road with an adjusted profile, width, and curb returns. This option is suitable for providing access to both lots. However, it is unable to meet the minimum bylaw requirements. In order to allow for subdivision to proceed, the applicant is requesting, of course, the variance to section 2B in order to reduce the requirement from 5 meters to 4 meters of width. In its existing state, emergency vehicles can't use the driveway at all. This is due to the existing grade change, as you can see, between Solly Road and the driveway. The proposed driveway alignment and profile will allow for traffic utilizing the driveway to see other driveway users in sufficient time to react accordingly. Emergency vehicles will still be able to access both properties via this driveway. Fire trucks will be unable to turn around on the property. However, that is not unusual for these types of access. They will be able to back out with guidance. Along with widening the existing driveway, the proposal for works will bring the driveway grade into compliance with bylaw standards. The proposed driveway works include capture of stormwater that currently flows onto Solly Road and into district storm infrastructure on Lakeshore Drive. The desired driveway option will also require the construction of a retaining wall along the western side of the driveway alignment in order to limit extents of the cut slope due to the increased width of the driveway. The retaining wall would be of variable height with a maximum height of 4.6 meters, and its identified location is identified on that PowerPoint there. The intent behind the 1.2 meter retaining wall regulation is to prevent construction of imposing monolithic walls that would fundamentally alter the character of a neighborhood and have impact on neighboring parcels. However, in this case, the retaining wall will not impact those residents. In this case, the retaining wall will only impact those residents benefiting from the proposed subdivision of the property. No other neighboring properties will have a view of the wall. Erosion of the existing uphill slopes along Solly Road is of significant concern, both for slope stability and sediment washing onto Solly Road. As an appropriately designed retaining wall will protect this section of the slope, limiting erosion and potential sediment washing onto Solly Road. While not explicitly following the bylaw, the proposed driveway design is a significant improvement in both safety and aesthetics compared to the current driveway configuration. Without both variance requests being approved, the proposed subdivision at 5277 Solly Road will not be able to proceed. The proposed driveway, although not meeting all minimum bylaw guidelines, is a considerable improvement, of course. The proposed retaining wall will help protect the slope along Solly Road while allowing the 4-meter driveway access. For these reasons, staff recommend that both variances be approved by council. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Alex. Is there anyone in the gallery that wishes to speak to this development's variance permit? No? All right. Council, any questions of our staff? Or his staff? Okay. Would Would someone like to bring forward the recommendation as written or something else? Councillor Van Alphen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As presented.
As presented. All right. And Councillor Holmes, you're seconding? Any further discussion on this?
No, the only comment I have, Madam Mayor, is a great compromise by staff, and I'm glad to see this going forward for the homeowner. Thank you.
Yep. Another house.
Another tennis player.
Another tennis player. Yeah, well, maybe. Just up above
They'll
there,
live
right?
there. They'll live there. They'll live.
Okay. If there is not any further discussion, I will call the question. All in favor? And any opposed? That's carried. On to 11.3, Development Variance Permit 20-013 at 137 Sumac Ridge Drive.
Alrighty. Alright, so the district...
Alex, could I just ask you to pull the mic?
course.
I should have asked you that earlier.
No worries.
Thank you.
Alright, so the district has received an application for variance in order to facilitate the construction of an infinity pool at 137 Sumac Ridge Drive. The requested variance is to section 5.5.2, which prescribes the maximum height for retaining walls. The applicant is requesting a variance from 1.2 to 2.5 meters. The OCP future land use designation of the subject property is low density residential, and it is zoned RSD3 residential estate lot. Aside from some neighboring agricultural lands, these land uses are consistent with other neighboring properties in the strata. The subject property currently has a single-family dwelling sited on it. Works were recently started on a residential addition and renovation to the home that was approved in 2019. The pool is the second phase to this renovation. The lot has an area of 1,296 square meters and is located approximately 2.25 kilometers north of downtown Summerland. The requirement for variance for the proposed pool was identified at the zoning analysis stage of building permit application. Only one bylaw compliance item was flagged, the retaining wall height requiring variance. The proposal met all other requirements outlined in the zoning bylaw. The proposed retaining wall is to be sited along the western property line adjacent to the future pool deck area as shown on the site plan. The wall is tiered into 4 sections as shown on the plan. This is in order to accommodate the terraced pool deck area. 3 of the 4 walls sections will rise between 1.8 and 2.5 meters, while the last section will rise approximately 1.5. The intent behind the 1.2 meter retaining wall regulation is to prevent construction of imposing monolithic walls that would fundamentally alter the character of a neighborhood and have impacts on neighboring parcels. This also prevents the artificial altering of landscapes to dramatically increase grade for building purposes. The proposed retaining wall is sited in the backyard of the subject property and will not be visible from adjacent properties or from Sumac Ridge Drive. The application is accompanied by a structural design sealed by a professional engineer with JMS Engineering Limited, and any geotechnical, structural, and water concerns will be addressed at the time of building permit. The proposed retaining wall height variance is being recommended for approval due to its limited impact on adjacent landowners and overall neighborhood character. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. You're the lone person in the gallery. Did you want to speak to this? Okay, thank you, sir. All right, questions, council? Councillor Traynor.
Could you just explain again where that wall will be? It looked like, I think that you just said that it wouldn't be visible from neighboring houses, but it looked to me like it would be from the house, I guess, to the south.
You can bring
I don't know. It's hard to tell from the photos.
So you can see on the site plan, it's kind of, so the wall, if you go to that photo, right, that one, so that's where the wall is going to be, right along that back side there. So that property maybe can see, if they could see over top down into the pool, but I would have a hard time believing they could see the wall from there. The other house, the other abutting property, there's potential they could see it. However, they probably have to peek out around the corner and be, I believe it will be, it's not going to be of significant a visual impact to them.
So the retaining wall is on the inner side?
Yes, that's
okay,
correct.
sorry, I thought it was on the outer side. But if it's on the inner side against their own house?
It's against that big bank, so.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to give you a break, Councillor Van Elfen. Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That development variance permit DVP 20-013 to vary section 5.5.2 of the zoning bylaw, maximum height of a retaining wall from 1.2 meters to 2.5 meters at 137 Sumac Ridge Drive, legally described as Strata Lot 10, District Lot 2194, ODYD, together with an interest in the common property in proportion to the unit entitlement of the strata lot shown on Form 1. Be approved.
Approved. Okay, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Van Elfen. Any further discussion on this? No? I'll call the question. All in favor? Oh,
No, just one question.
yes.
Can we get strata approval?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All in favor? And none opposed, so that's carried unanimously. 11.4, Development Services Monthly Report for June 2020.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. So just a quick summary of the report, and I've got it up on the screen, just to run through. So it summarizes all the development applications that we have currently within the system, within our planning department. You can see a number there. The statistics as they stand right now at the end of June, 3 subdivision applications submitted, 5 rezoning OCP amendment applications, 11 development permits, 17 variance applications, and 2 ALC applications. So fair way down compared to where we were this time last year. And on the building permit side of things, the permits issued at the end of June were 16, just below $3.5 million worth of construction value. And then when we look at the overall permits issued to this time, or to the end of June, we issued 82 building permits compared to 121 at the same time last year, and obviously approximately half of the construction value that we were at this time last year. So that's where things are at, and we provide more information in the finance update around the status of our building permit revenues, which Dave will speak to in a bit more detail. So obviously keeping an eye on where things are at there, and look forward to seeing if I can answer any questions from Council. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Any questions, Council? Okay, could I have someone bring forward acceptance of that, receiving for information? Councillor Patton, Councillor Barkle is seconding. All in favor? Thank you. And now on to business items 12.1. 2020 grant and aid update related to COVID-19. This is over to our Director of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. During the district's 2020 budget process, Council reviewed numerous grant and aid requests from community organizations and allocated $55,000 in funding with payments that were issued in early February. In early March, it became quite apparent that COVID-19 would impact the district of Summerland and bring with it unknown financial and economic consequences. The province of BC implemented restrictions limiting the amount of people that were able to gather in a single location at 50, which has impacted a portion of our grant and aid recipients to a point where some of these organizations had to actually cancel their events. Over the past few weeks, district staff have been in contact with all of the grant and aid recipients in order to assess what impacts this pandemic has had on their grant and aid projects or their events. The district's grant and aid policy states that the applicant organization within the current fiscal year must spend grant funding on the sole purpose for which it was awarded. So of the 14 organizations that received grant and aid funding, 5 have had their events canceled due to the pandemic and will not be able to meet the requirements to spend the funds in this fiscal year. Of these 5 organizations, the Summerland Fall Fair Society did not actually cash their check and are in the process of returning it back to the district. So the remaining 4 organizations have requested that the district allow them to carry these funds forward into 2021. Now administratively, this of course is going to require less staff time and is recommended by staff. If council does approve this, 2021 grant and aid applications from these 4 organizations will need to be vetted to ensure funding is not being provided for the same event that they're carrying funds forward. And that concludes my report, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Holmes.
Yeah, thank you. So I presume then if their event doesn't go ahead in 2021, then they can return it at that time?
Yeah, through the mayor, yes. We would then request the funds be provided back to the district.
Are we expecting that the Summerland Minor Hockey will be hosting the Midgets Provincials in Summerland in 2021?
Madam Mayor, at this point in time, we're not really sure what's happening yet with minor hockey. The one nice thing with minor hockey is there are numerous divisions. So if BC Hockey gets to a stage where they may be hosting provincials, there are from Atom to Midget that could potentially use those funds if Summerland is chosen. If not, again, we could.
So for that particular one, it wouldn't be as specific as Midget, it would be just provincials if we were selected?
It would be provincials, Madam Mayor,
yes. Okay, thank you. Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Barkle did? Oh, you want to bring it forward?
Sure.
Thank you.
As presented in the agenda, Matt.
Thank you. All right. Seconded. Councillor Carlson. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. 12.2, 2021 Permissive Tax Exemptions, COVID-19 update.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the Community Charter provides Council with the authority to grant permissive tax exemptions. These exemptions are implemented by bylaw and historically are provided for over multiple years. For the 2020 calendar year, permissive tax exemptions in Summerland totaled approximately $131,000. $29,000 for places of worship, with the remaining $102,000 provided to nonprofit organizations. Now, in the summer of 2016, Council went through a comprehensive permissive tax exemption workshop, and as a result of that work, Council resolved to provide places of worship with permissive tax exemptions over a 10-year period. And additionally, qualifying nonprofit organizations received 100% permissive tax exemption for a 4-year period, which ended in 2020. Due to the impacts of COVID-19, a comprehensive review of permissive tax exemption submissions will be more difficult this year. There's a lot of contributing factors, including continued closure of facilities, reduced staffing levels, workload prioritization and reallocations, and barriers to meet with applicants, just to name a few. Staff are therefore recommending a 1-year extension of permissive tax exemptions granted to nonprofit organizations for the 2021 fiscal year, or taxation year, sorry, which can be done through a bylaw amendment. This will then provide these organizations with permissive tax exemptions totaling approximately $132,000 for the 2021 year. If Council does choose to provide this 1-year extension, then we would then envision the 4-year review and approval cycle would be reinstated for the 2022 to 2025 taxation years. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Holmes.
Yes, thank you. So when we, it used to be we'd approve every year permissive tax exemptions, and we changed it to this 4-year cycle. And if I remember correctly, two factors went into that. One, well, maybe a few factors. We thought it was kind of a waste of time approving the same things year after year, and it also for the organizations, there was always that uncertainty when they were doing their own budgets whether they'd get the tax exemption or not. So they wanted some sort of longer term certainty for themselves. And the reason we chose that cycle to end in this 2020 year, we didn't want to hamstring an incoming council, so that's like the first thing they had to decide when a new council came in. But at the same time, with having a year under the belt, they wouldn't have been stuck with the previous council's decision, so to speak. So this kind of throws that out of whack, that thinking out of whack. I understand the reasoning for it and everything, but I guess that's something to consider next year when we take a look at it. But more of a comment than a question, sorry.
Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And along those lines, a new council could rescind the bylaw. Could they not? If it was like into a 4-year term?
I would think so.
Through the mayor, yes, a council could amend the bylaw.
Okay, thank you.
I just have one question, and you probably can answer this in terms of the private schools, and that would include the Montessori school and their proposed expansion. Does the whole area automatically get 100% permissive tax exemption, or is it more like a church where there are areas that are not being used for worship and they have to pay a certain amount?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The legislation does provide that private schools, the school building itself, and any lands associated with the school and the teaching of curriculum would be exempt.
So
the question would come in if there was a boarding house on property, whether or not that would get an exemption as well. And from what I've seen, it would not.
So the larger playground area would be covered by the permissive tax exemption, and would the new proposed daycare, the 3 to 5 age daycare, be part of that as well?
I believe so, Madam Mayor. I would have to confirm that, though.
Yeah, it's probably part of that whole Montessori teaching style. Okay, any other questions? If I could have somebody bring forward the motions that are there, please. Receive for thank you, Councillor Carlson.
I'll move 12.2, permissive tax exemptions being received for information and extending for 1 year.
Okay.
As written here.
Councillor Van Elfen. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Carries. On to 12.3, 2020 Utilities Collection Update. Again, related to COVID-19.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, this is a COVID-19 update on the finance world today. So, in response to the economic turmoil that's been brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic, Many utility providers took steps to provide temporary relief for their ratepayers. Now, although the District of Summerland Electrical Utility is not regulated by the British Columbia Utilities Commission, the district chose to be consistent with the direction of the BCUC by suspending disconnections for matters other than safety for a minimum of 90 days. As part of that decision, the famous red notices in Summerland, which are sent out monthly, notifying account holders that their accounts are in arrears, were no longer mailed out to those residents. The 90-day timeline that the BCUC has put into place has now concluded. However, moving forward, should further extension be directed by BCUC, staff would feel that the district would remain consistent with such an extension if it was to ever be brought forward. In addition to suspending disconnections, Summerland Council has provided the following measures to help utility customers deal through this pandemic. Extending the 10% discount on utility payment bills for the remainder of 2020, reducing annual irrigation and domestic service charges by 25%, and also reducing domestic, commercial, municipal water rates by 25% for the months of July and August. After approximately 3 months of stopping non-payment disconnections, there are 119 accounts in arrears, which represent just under 2% of total active accounts eligible for disconnection under the district's pre-COVID-19 criteria. The overall balance owing right now is just over, it's $111,761. The average amount owing is $493, and 52 accounts have not made any payments since March of 2020. Now, for comparison purposes, in June 2019, there were 28 accounts in arrears, so this is an increase of 325%. The district is looking to reinstate its practice of disconnecting utility services for non-payment. Staff is recommending a 3-phased approach in dealing with these disconnections. Under phase 1, the district would reactivate sending the red notices as of July 14th, or tomorrow. Disconnections would be ordered for residential tenants, not including commercial, starting on August 1st, and would commence with those accounts that have not made any payments towards their bills for the longest time. Phase 2, disconnections would be ordered for the remaining tenants, so this would include commercial tenants, as well as non-commercial owners starting on September 1st, 2020. And as with phase 1, the accounts that have not made payments for the longest period of time would be disconnected first. Under phase 3, disconnections would be ordered for all remaining owners starting on October 1st and would commence with those accounts that have not made any payments in their arrears for the longest time. This phased approach is being recommended as it will provide those account holders that have actively been making payments and attempting to address their utility accounts with the greater chance of catching up prior to being disconnected and then incurring the reconnection fee on top of what is already owned on their accounts. Now, additionally, a phased approach over 3 months will alleviate the need to have any additional staff or any overtime hours to do these disconnections if council was to do it in 1 month, for instance. Those are there are alternatives within the report, but this phased approach here is what is being recommended by staff. And it is, it's important to note that the district, we will, as a district, continue to work with any of the account holders that are having financial difficulties to work out some kind of a payment plan before physically disconnecting their power. And that concludes my report, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Questions? I'm wondering if there is a way, when you're sending out one of the red notices, if there is a way to put another notation on that notice that just says, you know, exactly what you just said. If you're having particular difficulties in paying your utilities, please contact us at whatever number. Is that Is that something that can be done? I'm not sure.
So Madam Mayor, right now our red notices are all pre-printed. I would have to, I haven't looked at one in quite a while. There is a lot of verbiage on the back. Something like that may already be on there, but I would need to confirm that. If not, I'm sure that as a temporary stopgap measure, we could get some pre-printed stickers or something and place them on, letting people know that. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Could I have someone bring that forward then, please? Councillor Van Elfen?
As presented, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Patton. Any further discussion? Councillor Holmes.
Just a question for clarification. So there are 52 accounts that haven't made payments since March, but last year there were 28 accounts. So I want to see how that's a 325% increase. That's less than 100, isn't it? Or am I not doing my math right?
No, so Councillor Holmes, so we were looking at the delinquent customers, so any customer that's been delinquent over 2 months. So as of June 2020, we have 119.
Okay.
But in June 2019, we only had 28.
Right,
so that's
okay.
where the
Gotcha.
325.
Right. Okay.
Okay, it's on the floor now. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. 12.4, 2020 financial COVID-19 update.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So like many municipalities, the District of Summerland has seen a financial impact as a result of the pandemic. The district closed many of its public facilities, including the recreation center, the arena, and municipal hall. These closures, as well as other reductions in revenue, have had a significant impact on the district's finances. Council reviewed numerous financial scenarios in mid-April, prior to directing staff to prepare an amended financial plan, which Council adopted on June 16th, 2020. The amended financial plan reduced the district's projected 2020 revenues by $3.29 million, or a 9.5% overall. Throughout this pandemic, staff have been closely monitoring actual revenues and how they compare to the projections that were provided to Council in mid-April. Based on this analysis, a revised revenue projection is being presented to Council this evening. Overall, the revised calculations are projecting an additional $777,700 in revenues when compared to the amended budget. This increase is attributed primarily to the utility funds, not seeing as large of consumption decreases as we had originally projected. When we look at the individual funds themselves, the following highlights are presented for Council. So the general fund. The general fund comprises the majority of the district's services and includes administration, finance, police, fire, cemetery, works, landfill, development services, recreation, and others. Basically everything that's not in the 3 utilities. There are numerous revenue streams that fund these services, with some showing higher projected revenues than what were originally calculated, and some showing lower projected revenues. The revised projections estimate an additional reduction in revenues of $188,000 and are based on year-to-date actuals as of June 24th. To summarize the major streams, there's 5 of them. So building permits, as Anthony alluded to earlier, to date, building permit revenue in 2020 totals $116,700. And that's a drastic decrease from the $413,800 that was originally budgeted for at the beginning of the year. Based on these actuals, a more conservative revised estimate We're now projecting building permit revenues to the end of 2020 at $194,500. When we look at business licenses, the district has issued 2020 business license invoices totaling $160,700. To date, over $38,000 is still outstanding and may need to be written off. The revised revenue amount in the provided projections of $125,000 basically takes into account that all of these amounts will be uncollected and be written off. When we look at grants, as in most years, the district budgeted and applied for specific operating grants to fund specialized programs and projects. Now, unfortunately, we were unsuccessful in obtaining about $225,000 worth of these operational grants. So revenues have been decreased. However, operational expenditures have been decreased on the other side because the projects were being paid for through the grant revenues. So the net effect there is zero. Municipal property rentals. The district had anticipated that a portion of our rental income would not be collected in 2020 due to the financial constraints of those individuals and businesses that rent property from the district. The district has had one renter reach out to make an alternative payment arrangement, which has been incorporated in the revised projections. So our projections were much more conservative than where we actually are currently. And the final item is recreation services. And this was alluded to earlier with the gentleman, the slow pitch. When projecting recreation revenues has been one of the most difficult tasks throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. Scenarios change daily based on pressures from user groups and the limited staff available to actually do the work. In addition to the requirements put out by the province of BC, the amended budget did not include any revenues from the campground that council was provided in mid-March, as it was unclear at that time if the facility would actually be allowed to open or not. Now that it is open, revenue projections have been adjusted to incorporate a conservative revenue for the campground. I believe it's $90,000. So these 5 items represent the major reasons for a projected further reduction in revenues within the general fund. Prior to moving on to the utility funds, there was one additional item I wanted to bring to council's attention. So one of the measures council implemented in order to provide some financial assistance to residents was extending the property tax due date from July 3rd to September 30th. The district issued approximately 5,550 property tax notices, totaling $17 million in 2020. Now this includes all levies collected on behalf of all jurisdictions, so the school tax, BC assessment, RDOS, all of those. As of July 7th, when this report was written, 3,469 properties have taken advantage of the extended due date, leaving an outstanding property tax bill totaling $10.5 million. Now comparing this to 2019, when the due date was July 5th, there were 533 properties that had outstanding taxes totaling $1.5 million. So people are definitely taking advantage of the extended due date.
Nobody in this room, I'm sure.
So when we look at this, staff is continuously monitoring the district's cash flows and we're making sure that appropriate balances are being maintained to meet operational and capital requirements. And, taking into account all of the budget adjustments council's made over the past few months, at this point in time, we are comfortable with our current cash levels. However, if that changes, council will be made aware. Now to switch gears and just touch on the district's 3 utilities prior to wrapping this up. When we look at the water fund, in preparation of amending the district's 2020 to 2024 financial plan, council, again, just like in the general fund, reviewed different revenue projections, and was also cognizant of trying to provide financial relief to residents. Council approved a budget amendment that saw an overall revenue decrease of $640,000 in June. Over the last little couple months, staff have been reviewing the assumptions that were used to calculate that decrease, and based on these actuals that have been coming in, the original assumptions that were used have been revised, and I guess I can read them out. They are on the screen, but a 10% reduction in commercial and municipal consumption is now being projected from June to December. It used to be about, I think it was 40 when we originally looked at it. A 0% reduction in residential consumption. We have seen no drop in residential consumption at all. 25% reduction in commercial, municipal, and residential water rates. A 25% reduction in irrigation, and the 10% discount. So again, taking that and incorporating that into the revised projections, we are now anticipating an estimated revenue increase of $237,150 in the water utility, which would then put the utility as a whole into a surplus position. And just so council's aware, these projections are all based on year-to-date actuals as of May 31st, 2020, because as council's aware, our billing process is 1 month behind. The June bills just went out, so we do have more exact data, but I don't have that on me. When we look at the sewer fund, the projections in front of council and in the report, there is nothing in the sewer fund because, as council will note, no changes were actually made in the sewer budgets. And when we look at year-to-date actuals, they are within anticipated levels. So things are looking good in the sewer fund. On the electrical side, just like the water fund, council did review numerous scenarios prior to approving the budget amendment that saw an overall revenue decrease of $1.4 million. And again, when we compare this, the assumptions that were made to the actuals that have come in over the last few months, the projections now are being revised to take into account only a 20% decrease in commercial and municipal consumption from June to December, a 0% decrease in industrial and residential. Again, we have not seen any decrease in either of those two. A 60% reduction in streetlight revenues, primarily due to the transition to the LED lighting, and then continuing on with a 10% discount up until December 31st. Incorporating all of these revised projections into the cash flow and the budget, we're estimating revenue increases of $728,400, which then moves the district into a surplus position of just under $210,000 for the year. And again, as like the water fund, these projections are based on year-to-date actuals as of May 31st. So to summarize, Madam Mayor, the intent of this report was really to provide council with an updated financial picture and revised revenue projections just based on the last 2.5 months of actual data. As staff, we will continue to monitor actuals and provide council with periodic updates, which may at some point in the near future potentially require a further budget amendment as we move on. That summarizes my report, and I will gladly answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Barkle.
Yeah, I have a great deal of sympathy for the softball group.
Could you use your mic,
Yeah,
please?
sorry.
Yeah, then we can all hear.
I was sort of leaning back and relaxing a little bit through that report. I have a great deal of sympathy for the softball group. If the fields are there, why can't we hire the staff back that it would take to allow them to play? It seems like a waste not to. Is there some other considerations we haven't talked about?
Yeah. Through the chair, Madam Mayor. Dave, have you got the information Laurie provided?
Yeah.
Okay.
You want me to answer?
Over to Dave.
Okay. Through the chair, Madam Mayor. So staff does have some projections in order to get the ball fields up to a point where they can actually be played on. And based on the calculations, to have 2 fields up and running by August 10th, if staff are brought back by July 14th, it would take approximately 1.6 FTE, so we would need to bring back 2 people for 7 weeks at $1,700. So that's $19,100 to get those fields up and running and looked after. If we wanted to do 3 fields, that cost would then increase to $23,800. And there's additional costs that would need to be looked at in regards to the gate openings and the closing the washrooms, which haven't been taken into account in either of those 2 amounts. When we look at the requests for the ball fields that we currently have, we have from Adult Slow Pitch, they're looking for a 10-team league to play 120 games with a revenue of $2,457. So that's the disparities there.
Go ahead, Councillor Barker.
Yeah, so how does that compare to a normal summer? Would it be, I mean, that's 6 weeks of mowing the grass and stuff to bring it into use? And would we be doing that on a normal year, and then it would be continued to be used or used more often, or what would a normal year look like?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, so typically we would have all 5 ball fields running, as well as the 3 soccer pitches. And so they would be mowed and maintained throughout the season with other groups such as minor baseball, senior slow pitch, Penticton men's slow pitch, youth soccer, and adult men's soccer that would be used in those facilities. So these costs were just to bring back staff to get 2 or 3 ball fields up and running, to maintain the infields, to do the grass cutting, to do the line painting, get the bases, all of the prep work that's involved for them to play, as well as the cutting of the grass. And throughout the summer, we've continued to cut the grass at the fields, but at a higher length and at a less frequency than we typically would, just to keep them from getting out of control so that they'll be usable next year. So the costs that were provided were for the 7 weeks from assuming we called staff back tomorrow and they would have a week to come back to work, having them through then to the first week of September. Those are the costs that we'd be looking at.
Councillor Holmes?
Yeah, it seems remarkable that it costs that much just to get a couple baseball fields going. I find it actually mind-boggling. How many fields did the slow pitch people want, and are they the only ones requesting?
They are the only ones that are requesting, and we've worked with them just on a couple options. I think initially their request was 3 fields. We talked about 2 fields or 1 field, and so the costs that were provided were for 2 fields or 3. If you go down to 1, there's really not a lot of savings because of the time it takes to switch over from the infield grooming equipment to the mower. There's time that takes to switch that equipment over, and so it's more efficient if you're doing 2 or 3 or multiple fields versus just 1.
And just to follow up, and are they able to use the practice field at Powell Beach? Because when I'm down there, that field looks like it's just like it does every year, and I think people are actually using it. And I know that field is mowed because it's a park. So, I mean, is that an alternative for them that they could use that for this year?
Yeah, I guess currently there's use on some of the fields, informal use, and I don't know if we've changed. We might be only cutting that once a week, which we typically would. For Dale Meadows, though, instead of twice a week cuttings, we're down to once a week. But for these ones, if they were going to use formal use, we'd go back to twice a week. But we've expressed to them that if the gates stay closed and we don't change our maintenance, we recognize there will be informal use of those fields, but they're looking for something more structured in order to get the number of games that they're looking at in. So I don't think they're satisfied with just the informal use of occasional teams getting together and playing. They're looking at something that's 3 or 4 nights a week, multiple games each evening.
But my question is, I guess, Powell Beach might be a lot cheaper to get back up if just that one, because it's kind of already being maintained as a park, and that rather than Dale Meadows. And I know it might not be ideal for them, but it might, if it works for them, then that could be a compromise.
I think that field is a lot shorter as well. I think there are issues. I know it's used during Action Fest, but there are challenges with the length of that field as well. So it may not be ideal for their use. Did Councilor Turner have something? Oh. Yeah, the Powell Beach field isn't really preferred. It's not that level, doesn't have fence at the end or slope. But I'm trying to figure out, like, why would we spend the money, say, last year and next year, but not this year? That's what I'm struggling with in my mind. It's, if we did open up a couple of fields, they would probably get maximum use because there's only 2 rather than, how many others that there could potentially, there is in another year. So, yeah, I'm thinking that, or maybe I'm biased towards softball, having been a softball player one time, many years ago. But I know that the Summerland is huge on softball. It's a big part of our community spirit. And so I think I'd like to put a motion forward that we open up 2 fields for the duration of the summer.
All right. Seconder for that motion?
I'll second for discussion.
Thank you. Dave?
I can try to answer Councillor Barkwell's question, Madam Mayor. When we look at this year compared to last year and possibly future years, Council has already done, I think in the financial report, we're looking at reduced revenues of about over $3.5 million in our general fund. Our general fund is what pays for recreation, it pays for landfill, it pays for everything. So when we look at such a reduced decrease in the amount of money coming in, granted, recreation has always been subsidized, and I think it always will be. But we're looking at much higher subsidization, especially when some of our other revenue streams that sometimes help pay for that subsidization are seeing drastic decreases in revenue. So our overall money that we have now to pay for all of our operations has gone down. Yes, we have taken steps to lower our costs as well, which included decreasing the levels of service that we're currently doing on our sports fields. So that's kind of that, can't really have one without the other, at least on the financial side of things. I'm not sure if that answers Councillor Barkwell's question or not, but in my finance head, that's kind of the answer.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, that helps a lot. I mean, it's a very subjective question here, what our priorities are going to be. Whether it's a compromise to do it for 2 fields for the last part of the year and say they've cut enough by, all the spring. There's no right or wrong. It's just whatever council feels like the priority should be.
Councillor
I have a question. The gentleman that was here speaking to the issue, I'm just wondering if in conversations that have been had, whether there was any conversation about them paying more in order to actually use the maintained field. If you suggest there's 120 games planned, I'm just wondering if if they were the only ones using it, or that wanted to use it, if they would contribute more. I don't know how many people are on you need 22 people to field a proper ball game, right? Is that 11 and 11? Am I in the right game? I think so. 10?
In the right ballpark.
Okay, in the right ballpark. So I just wonder, if you've got 20 people and they're paying like 10, what are they paying, $15 for the hour for the game? Like that, for the whole team, that doesn't seem like very much. I wonder if there's a conversation there that has been had or not. If I go play broomball or hockey or something, I pay a drop-in fee of 10 or $15 every time I show up.
Through the chair, Madam Mayor, so we haven't explicitly had that discussion around paying more for using it. We've got the data that we have from them around the 2,500 odd in revenue that would come from the use. What might be, and it's certainly something that we can discuss if that's council, if council want that to move forward. But maybe Dave, if you can just so council's aware where we're sitting at with the projections, and what a reduction in $20,000, for example, if that's what it takes to get the fields ready, would do to the budget projections that have been revised as they stand right now. So if that'll help in council's decision-making process to see where we're sitting with our surplus.
So I believe this was provided as an attachment in the report. I hope it was. So the revised projections within the general fund, overall now we're looking at revised revenues of $14.9 million, total expenses of 14.7, which leave us with a surplus of 212,000, which is $17,000 less than what we had originally projected way back in April. Now, there are a couple other potential impacts to that surplus. One is, council will recall during budget deliberations way back in, it seems like years now, but it was only February, council had earmarked 0.8% of a tax rate increase to go specifically and directly into that asset management reserve. The projections in front of council right now, that is not happening. That was taken out way back in April. So if council was to put that back in, that 212,000 surplus would need to be reduced by that 0.88%, which is $76,600. So that would decrease that surplus down to 127,000. There's also some additional time. We have, as council will recall, there was an HR part-time assistant that was put in the budget, and the revised budget that council saw again back in April, that position, the budget for that position had been removed. With looking at vacation coverages and with our HR manager being away and work needing to be done, there is a proposal that we will need to bring that HR part-time assistant in for probably 20 to 30 days between June and December to help get some work done. So that's another $8,000. So overall, as of right now, we're looking at a revised, a surplus of 127. If council was to move forward with bringing back additional staff to open these fields and get them up and running, that would just further reduce that surplus number that we have.
Councillor Holmes, and then Barkle.
Well, you can go first. Who's first?
I was just thinking, it's a very much a value judgment here, and with this whole COVID thing and people not being able to go anywhere and do anything, at least one of the safe things to do is to be outside and do activities. And so there's an additional mental health value to the recreation this year, which strengthens my my desire, you might say, to see us spend a little bit of money this way and get some use out of the fields that are there anyhow. And it's, you know, it's something. Yeah.
Thank you. Just a question about why the gate has to be closed at Dale Meadows. Some people have actually asked me that, you know, they use that space for walking and walking their dogs and everything, and there's no place to park. So is there a reason why the gate is closed?
Yeah, so we've had a request for that come through as well. Reason being is that with no formal use of those fields and no public washrooms being open, it was best to keep the gate closed, to just restrict it to informal activity. It reduces the amount of garbage that needs to be collected. There's no desire to have the washrooms open. It doesn't appear then that the fields are open formally for use. And so it just reinforces that current closure of that area to formal activity.
Okay, to follow up then. So what risk is there of informal use of the fields, of just people going there and using it without, you know, being sanctioned by the district? I mean, do we have any risk of people just going out there and playing?
I guess with the fields not being maintained, if they're out there hitting the ball around, I guess there is no implicit permission for them to use it. So if an incident did occur, someone did get injured, the district could be less liable for them to come back on. If there was some risk that was discussed, if we allowed them to use the fields at a lower maintenance, that being a big concern. So if it's informal use, then I think, you know, the district can say we didn't permit the use. It was chosen by the person that was using it, and that liability is reduced. So I don't think there's a significant risk by allowing informal activity.
So opening the gates implies permission to use, or
I think you're going to see increased use if you do that. Right? You're going to see more vehicles going there, more people using it.
But it doesn't necessarily imply that we're giving permission to use it.
I don't know. Yeah, definitely. We're not booking the fields and providing organized users to use it. It was just another way to reinforce that this area is formally closed, and that to reduce those additional costs that come with allowing people into areas, whether it's litter cleanup, whether it's a desire to have the washrooms open, whether it's just the general maintenance of additional people in those areas.
Just you know, my feeling that, you know, this is the summer of unorganized play. I know in tennis, all the tournaments have been canceled up and down the valley that people would normally play, and I think that's just the reality of this summer. Is all and anything, all organized sport is kind of just on hold, which doesn't mean that people aren't playing these sports. They're just doing it like in the old days. You know, you just call up your buddies and go out and play, and which, so maybe, you know, if we could kind of get that message out to the slow pitch guys, is that, you know, just do what you have to do, but it's not formal.
Councillor Van Alphen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Then we might run into scheduling problems between teams and stuff. My only concern is if we say yes to this group, then what about seniors men's fastball or slow pitch, and what about, you know, the soccer pitches? When, you know, like if we do it for one, then we pretty much got to open the whole complex, you know, because other user groups are going to come along and say, hey, you've done it for them, what about us? You know, we want to have our opportunity also. So, you know, I don't know, where do we start and where do we stop? I mean, I hear what what everybody's saying, and I don't disagree, but I'm just afraid that if we do it for one, there's going to be a lineup of other, you know, groups and teams wanting their shot too. So do we open up the whole facility and so much for the 20-something thousand and we double that and away we go? But we said end of August, I thought, was the date of starting to call back staff. So I don't know. It's just being the devil's advocate, I guess.
Anthony?
Yeah, just through the chair, Madam Mayor, I just wanted to follow up on that. The if we had more groups coming in, and that would be exactly what we want. Unfortunately, we haven't heard from a lot of the groups that use that. Soccer, for example, they're not coming back with their season. There's obviously a revenue component to there. So from what we've seen so far, it's just been the slow pitch league and their 10-team league play component that has been mentioned. Recreation directors heard from girls fast pitch. They've been inquiring about the pitches, but given their youth user group, they don't pay any revenues. So there's they're the only other group so far that's come forward in addition to slow pitch. We certainly, if we had a full slate, and I think it's similar to the arena downstairs, we had a business case that made sense from a financial perspective, but as the discussion has been, financial sense on the recreation side of things, it's where there's the service that we provide versus the revenue that we bring in that don't align. So there's some it's a tough decision, and I think as Dave and Chris has mentioned, this whole year's been difficult to try and predict and figure out what the right approaches are, and we could certainly open up the pitches and get things ready to go and be forced to shut them down, but there's risks with all of the different facilities and priorities that we have right now. But there is the availability of funds, as Dave mentioned. There's not a lot based on the projections that we have, so council have the ability to direct staff to provide the additional resources to get the fields up and running, or maintain the status quo, and staff will prepare for September. And if we can continue to work with the slow pitch league and they can figure out a use of that field for 1 month, 6 weeks, for example, for a shorter period of time, then that may be a solution that we need to work on as well. So a variety of different options. It's just a very difficult position to be in based on the revenues that we have right now and the unexpectedness of trying to figure this all out.
Are you the one that's been working most closely with Jeremy?
So there's been conversation. Laurie's been working in recreation with Jeremy very closely, her and I, over the last couple of weeks, trying to discuss different options with them.
So he was talking about getting back, well, he's looking at August the 1st. In the kind of the scenario that Dave mentioned, this would be August the 10th.
Mm-hmm.
So that is about a 4-week time frame to get the fields back to something.
Yeah, through chair. So if tomorrow, for example, we call back staff, we have 7 days for the staff to come back. Ideally, they turn up the following day, but there's a time period based on our agreement that gives them 7 days to come back. So that takes us out to July 21st, and then you're looking at a couple of weeks to get the fields ready for that August 10th date, if that's the decision to commence the use of the fields.
So they were looking at August 1st to end of October, right?
Correct.
So that would be
week and a half shorter, roughly.
Okay. Richard? Councillor Barco? Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just kind of curious. I mean, if they come back on the 21st and the fields won't be available till the 10th, I mean, wouldn't they have to be mowed a couple of times? Don't you mow them about once a week? Why would it take that long to get the fields ready?
Yeah, so currently they're being mowed once a week, so that we'd have to lower the mowers and cut them to the shorter length. There's grooming the infields, placing the bases, doing the lines, doing all the weed trimming around the fence that hasn't been done yet this year. those are just the one, I guess that's, the list of tasks that I'm aware of, but we were in discussions with staff. Initially, we were talking approximately 4 weeks to get the fields up and running if we made a decision at some point during the year to do so. Looking at this proposal, we said if we can get staff back potentially in 3 weeks, we could have them ready to go. That's just based on other things that our staff are currently tackling as well. So if we get the additional resources to do so, that's what we can commit to. And if they're ready sooner, then I'm sure we can work with the group and possibly get them out there as soon as possible. But there's a time frame that these staff would need to do so to get these fields prepped and ready.
Anthony, do you know if 2 fields would be enough? Did Jeremy indicate that 2 fields would be enough?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Holmes.
I just don't think we can afford it. I just think it's too much money for a year where we've tightening our belt and we're trying to find reductions where we can. It's unfortunate, and the fact that there's only one group coming forward with this request kind of, I think, speaks to where the minds are at most of the other groups, and I think most people want to understand that why we can't open them. I would say we stayed the course with the original plans, and so I won't support the motion.
Councillor Barkwell?
So if we don't accelerate it, when did I hear it right that I don't remember it, early September, the fields are scheduled to be reopened? Is that what we were talking about?
Well, that's when we're scheduled to have all staff called back. Okay. The temporary layoffs were to the end of August or the start of September. So if there was a commitment from this group to be back on the fields as of September 1st, then we would still need to have staff potentially back, 2 or 3 weeks earlier to have them prepped and ready. Those layoffs and the revenue projections and cost saving measures, we're assuming that no fields were open in 2020.
Oh, okay. So the possibility of a fall league wasn't there to begin with?
No, but we would have the staff back as of early September to potentially start, as we normally would. There's also going to be a period, like I know we talked about playing till the end of October. That's going to be very weather dependent because at some point the fields need to be closed and starting to be prepped for the following year. So this year, with them not being played on as much, I don't know if that can be reduced or lessened. But we can't guarantee that play out to the end of October would be an option as well.
So the motion that's on the floor is to adjust, rather than just receive it for information, to include an adjustment to allow for the playing for the ball.
Well, I just made a motion about the ball, but nobody seconded it, so I guess it's going to die.
No, it was seconded by Councillor Holmes.
Okay.
So let's vote on that then, unless there's more discussion. All in favor? Opposed? So it's not carried. So could I have someone bring forward the other motion that's there to receive it for information? Councillor Traynor? Seconded by Councillor Van Alphen. Any further discussion on this? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that carries unanimously. Just one more, Dave. 12.5, Quarterly Procurement. Oh no, this isn't yours. Quarterly Procurement Report. This is for Karen.
It is. Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report is bringing forward, based on Council's policy, the Procurement Policy 200.6, The staff is to inform council of all procurement awards that are valued over $250,000 or greater. So it is meant to be a quarterly report, and there was no procurement over that amount in Q1. So that's why this is the first time you're seeing this. So we have listed in the report, there's 5 procurement awards ranging from just around $400,000 right up into $745,000 for the Summerland sanitary landfill. And unless there's questions from council, that concludes the information report.
Okay. Any questions of Karen on this report? No? Could I have someone bring forward the motion then, please, to receive for information? Councillor Van Elfen, Councillor Holmes. Any discussion? All in favor? And none opposed. Okay. And then Karen, you're up again. Business arising from the Committee of the Whole and closed sessions, starting with the solar and storage project this afternoon.
So on the screen, Madam Mayor, is the resolution that was passed today, July 13th, at the 1 o'clock Committee of the Whole meeting, that 13500 Prairie Valley Road, 12591 Morrow Street, Denicky Street be selected as the site of the solar and storage project, and that staff be directed to complete a remedial action risk management plan for the solar and storage project site, and that staff be directed to proceed with completion of the engineering, procurement, and construction phases of the solar and storage project. So this is just bringing that forward from the Committee of the Whole meeting as a business arising. Okay.
And then the closed meeting resolution?
The closed meeting resolution that's on your agenda, Madam Mayor, is from the meeting of council on June 30th. And on June 30th, at the closed meeting, the following 2 recommendations were released to the public, and they are on the agenda in the package for you. They read, the first one reads that the redacted version of the solar and storage project fractal report be released to the public and posted to the District of Summerland website. And the second resolution, that a second version of the solar and storage project fractal report that does not redact the District of Summerland budget information be released to the public and posted on the website prior to July 13th, 2020. So the additional late item that we were speaking to
yes.
For 13.3, and that was up there on the screen for you. So that's a late item, and that's the resolution from the special closed meeting of July the 10th, where council directed staff to release attachment D, which was redacted updated financial analysis of the solar and storage project, to this July 10th, 2020 report from the Director of Corporate Services to the public, so to release that to the public, and further that council directs staff to release the cash flow summaries from attachment E, 2020-0710 financial analysis, changes markup, to the July 10th, 2020 report from the Director of Corporate Services, again releasing that to the public.
Good. Thank you. I'm sure that the public enjoyed hearing that. All right, thank you, Karen. On to 14.1 is a notice of motion by Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I'm bringing this motion forward in response to Councillor Barkwell's letter to the editor June 8th on the Penticton Herald website in respect to a closed meeting council held on February 27th, 2019, and whether or not that meeting should have been closed to the public. So after raising the matter in his letter, Councillor Barkwell said there's no point in discussing how it happened, and then he proceeds to the actual point of the letter, which was to talk about this solar and storage item that we dealt with this afternoon. I don't think you can just bring up something like that and then say there's no point discussing it. I think having brought it up, we now have to discuss it. And because there's a perception now that council has a habit of conducting business behind closed doors, which I don't believe that's the case, but it's created the perception. So we know a meeting can only be closed to the public for specific reasons as provided by provincial legislation, basically to discuss the 3 L's, land, legal, and labor. When we close a meeting to the public, we often don't know the specifics of an item until we're into the meeting. So we trust the process to ensure that what needs to be discussed in a closed meeting is discussed in a closed meeting, and what needs to be discussed in an open meeting is discussed in an open meeting. For the meeting that Councillor Barkwell referred to, much of the subject matter did fit the criteria for closed meeting, but by the end of the meeting, we had made a decision, and most of us, if not all of us, questioned why was that decision made in camera. So we knew we had a problem, and I thought we had dealt with it. I thought we acted quite bluntly at the time. I can't say how we dealt with it, since it was a labor matter. It was dealt with in a closed meeting. But maybe we didn't address the problem adequately, or so I don't really understand why it's being raised again a year and a half later. So I say we need to deal with it. So to understand how the process failed us and how something that should have been discussed in an open meeting ended up on a closed meeting agenda, I think the first thing we need to know is how our agendas are made. Councillors receive their agendas the same time as they're made public, and we approve them at the start of each council meeting, but we don't really know how they're put together, and the public doesn't really know how they're put together. So I think we need to know, for example, and there may be other things as well, but the process an agenda goes through before it's published, how information is collated from across departments to put into an agenda, how it's determined what should be discussed in a closed meeting and what should be discussed in an open meeting, how, when making an agenda, do we accommodate those items where part should be discussed openly and part should be enclosed, and how the agenda is signed off and who signs it off. I appreciate we now have entirely different staff involved in the agenda making process than we did in February 2019. But again, since it was raised in public by a member of council, I think there's a perception it's still a problem. So once we know what's involved in setting our agendas, we can review the process and make any changes if necessary to ensure transparency. And perhaps if this motion passes, when staff report back on the process, they might themselves have some recommendations to improve the process. As Vice Chair of the Regional District, I'm involved in the preparation of the RDOS agenda, so I am happy to provide any insights to the way things are done there, if that'll be of any help. This is the only thing I can think of to move forward on this. Maybe some of you, the rest of us, have some other ideas. If so, I'd love to hear them. But I don't think we can really ignore this. Thank you. So I'd like to make the proposed staff resolution that council directs staff to report back to a future meeting of council on the process for preparing council meeting agendas as outlined in the notice of motion dated July 13th, 2020.
Seconder? Councillor Carlson? Okay, we've heard some great input from Councillor Holmes. I have a question for you, Councillor Holmes. When you're reviewing, you mentioned the signing off of the agendas. When you're reviewing the RDOS agendas, does somebody sign off the agenda?
That's a good question.
I know that
the CAO does.
The
CAO would in the RDOS. I can find out if the chair does or not. I'm not sure.
Okay.
It's
yeah, I'd be interested in knowing that. I don't sign it off here. Anthony signs off the staff reports. All right. Any further? Well, I guess, yeah, Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I understand where Councillor Holmes is coming from, but we also have to remember back what it was like in February 2019 under our leadership. And there's a reason that that leadership is no longer here. And I think from the time that happened and we've gone into the transition phase and now with Anthony, I feel that it is a night and day difference. I feel that, Madam Mayor, when we're into close, you do a very good job in pulling us back if we start wandering, and as our CAO. So I just wonder, to add another more burden, more workload onto staff, when in the grand scheme of things, it was our leader that took us down that road, and we allowed her to take us down that road. I don't know what the benefit at this point is. I have a hard time rationalizing in my head what the larger picture would hold in regards to that.
Would you care to respond, Councillor Woods? You're not saying you have to. Just
No, I don't know either. That's why I think you'd review it to see where the gaps might be and how it happened. If there's a problem with the process, then we should fix the process. So.
Councillor Barkle.
I respect and admire Councillor Holmes' attempt to maybe deal with the perception problem. I think a lot of councils, they get accused of that sort of thing even when it's not true. I think that what Councillor Patton said is quite applicable too. As I said in the meeting, you know, it didn't really dawn on me till quite a bit later that, wait a minute, you know, I don't think there was anything in that meeting that should have been discussed in camera, and the whole question of process. But if we can review the process, maybe make people aware that we are painfully aware of the perception and are doing everything we can through this review process, then you know, some good will be accomplished.
Any further discussion? Okay, let's vote on the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried unanimously. Thank you, Councillor Holmes. On to correspondence, 15.1. Is there anything in correspondence that anyone would like to bring forward? There's quite a bit of it there. All right, could I have someone bring forward the correspondence for information? Thank you, Councillor Patton and Councillor Van Elfen. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Councillor reports. Looks like we don't have to go to 17 tonight, so let's start with Councillor Barkle today.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess the only thing I can really mention is that I attended a meeting of the Museum Society, and they've received some funding from the federal government to be able to hire a summer student, so they're quite happy about that. The meeting was held outside in the park with social distancing, and you know, I hope that they continue to do that for as long as possible, and next year too.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Patton?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have nothing to report.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Traynor?
Other than reading solar information for the last 2 weeks straight, I don't have anything to report.
Thank you. Councillor Holmes?
Nothing to report. We have RDUS this week, this Thursday, so the month changed it all around.
Yes.
So it used to be you'd have
Alternate weeks.
yeah, alternate weeks, but it's the same week this time.
Okay, Councillor Carlson?
I have nothing to report tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Van Elfen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Nothing to report tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, shorter reports. So I will ask for someone to bring forward adjournment. Please, Councillor Van Elfen and Holmes. All in favor? Thank you. (8:30).